Hi guys, I'm Maria of Pink Pony Design, and today I was hoping you would join me in making my Almora bag. It's my latest pattern, and this is the bag we will be making together today. Isn't it pretty? This particular one that we're making today, I've lengthened the strap a little bit. So this one up here is the original length strap, which is more of a handheld bag. However, today we were going to be making the longer strap, which is explained in the video and in the pattern how to lengthen your strap to your desired length. But this one is long enough to actually pop on your shoulder when you're out and about, so you can have your hands free as you're shopping. The interior of this little bag contains a zipper pocket, like so. However, today we're also going to be adding an open pocket on the other side for your cell phone and other little bits and bobs. So that is described in the video. I hope you will have fun joining me today. Let's get started. Hi guys, let's get started on the Almora bag. So as I've already interfaced my vinyl, we can hop ahead a few steps and start with step number 3 in the pattern. If you're insecure about how to interface your vinyl, I have videos on that. So just check out my channel and you will find exactly how I do this. This vinyl is so beautiful, by the way. It's like candy. I want to eat it. Okay, let's get started. I have chosen to have a little bow instead of my standard handmade tag for this one. And I have decided to be inspired by one of my pattern testers, Sofia. And she placed her bow up here, and I thought that was so cute because it really made it visible. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. So we're going to start by measuring out where we want our bow, and I think I already marked the center, by the way. I usually do a little clip there when I draw my pattern pieces, so I have already got the center marked out. Now I'm just going to decide how high I want this to be. So we have to keep in mind that a piece of this disappears as a seam allowance, so maybe 1 3/4 inches up from the top could be a good idea. Yeah, that should be good. Yeah, let's do 1 3/4 inches. That should be perfect. And it's pretty easy to see to follow the center on this, since I have the for quilting there, so I can just kind of center my little tag on that. However, I think I might want to center it in 2 of these little quilted areas, so I think I'm going to put it a little lower down than I initially planned. Yeah, let's do that. Let's put it there. So I'm going to center it in the middle of my quilted diamonds here, or pre-quilted diamonds, like that. And then we're going to take our seam ripper and make little holes. So I'm just going to double check that that will look good. It will look so good. So excited for this bag. We make little holes or little slits with our seam ripper. You do the same way if you're using a handmade tag. You just place it according to the pattern or wherever you want it, really. So just play with it. And when I make the holes, I make them, oh, that was hard. Oh, Jesus, I can barely get through this vinyl. There we go. We make them rather too small than too large to start with, since normally the vinyl fabric might stretch a little as we force them in. So rather start small and increase than the other way around. There we go, let's try that. Da, da, da. There we are. Oops. One needs to be expanded a bit. Just an itty bitty piece. There we go. That one. There we go. Oh, it's gonna be so cute. Seriously, look at that. Yeah, and we're gonna put this. Let's see. I don't think there was a. No, this one didn't come with a metal washer, so I'm just gonna bend these in like so. Let's see if that was, yeah, that wrinkled the front, not nice. So I'm gonna try to, I might actually do that one open instead. I don't want it to, but also crease the front. That's not good at all. That is why you want the metal washer. It actually makes a difference. I'm gonna go see if I can find one. Hang on a second. So I went and stole a metal washer from another tag. So we can do this. Hopefully it'll fit. Let me just bend those up a little. There we go. And then we carefully bend those outwards. Come on, baby. I'm strong enough for this. There we go. That's going to look much better, but I need a little help. There we go. So the metal washer is like a little spacer that makes sure that I don't like wrinkle up my interfacing, which really sucks when you do. So let's not do that. Now I have this metal piece here, so I'm gonna place a small piece of tape. This is duct tape, pink duct tape. And I just place that over there so that I know it won't fray my lining fabric in my bag later. So that's just a little extra protection. There we go. How cute is that? Oh, I'm so happy. Let's continue with the zipper preparation. I have a fairly long zipper, so I think I'm going to try to keep it. Oh, that was difficult to open. I'm going to try to keep it together for you so you can see how you do that. It's the same way I do in the pattern as well. So let's start with a little piece of tape. What we're going to do, this might actually be easier to see in the pattern, but we're going to make a fold so that we get a nice and neat end to our zipper, like that. We want that nice 90-degree angle. You can do that further down on your zipper if you have zipper by the yard as well. So you just do the same kind of fold, but with the zipper teeth instead, like so. So what we're going to do is add a little piece of tape just so it'll hold in place while I'm doing this. There we go. So I add a little bit of tape there, and then we fold. Yeah, this is really hard to show because it's so fiddly and my fingers are all in the way. So we just kind of fold this back and down till we get a nice 90-degree angle. And like I said, this is easier to see in the pattern. So actually take a look in the pattern and I'm just gonna stitch this down so that it stays in place during construction. There we go. And then we do the same thing to the other side of the zipper. I'm just gonna trim away this part here since I don't want that in the way when I'm stitching this down. So then we do it backwards, like so, on this side as well. So let me just get a little tape here. You can of course use a drop of glue, or you can just hold it down with your fingers maybe if you find that easier. So let's see if we can make it possible for you to see this. So you just kind of fold this one under, push this one up so you have a 90-degree angle, and press it in place. Like that, and from the back it'll be a nice 45-degree angle. There we go. Let's give that a few safety stitches so it doesn't come unraveled as we work with it. There we go. And trim. And we have a prepped zipper. There we are. So let's take the exterior. I'm going to start with the one I'm going to use as my front. And we're going to make a little mark. Let me see if I have a smaller ruler. There we go. And 3/4 of an inch in from this little edge, from the small edge. I'm going to make a little mark. And the same thing on the other side. 3/4, wait, can you see that? 3/4 of an inch in. We make a little mark as well. And that is where we're going to stop and start our zipper. And I'm going to do that on my back piece as well. 3/4 of an inch in, marking the seam allowance. 3/4 of an inch in, marking the seam allowance. There we go. I know this one. The cap. There we go. Okay, so we have our front exterior. We have our zipper. Oops. Neatly edged, ended. And I'm going to switch to my super slim foot, since that's the one that's easiest for me to work with. But you might want to use your zipper foot or something similar that lets you get close to the zipper when you're sewing this. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to, from our marks, we're going to start clipping this in place. However, since we're using a somewhat weird seam allowance, I think I'm going to start by marking my seam allowance on my zipper tape. This way, I don't have to worry about using the wrong seam allowance. So I'm going to draw my seam allowance at 3/8 of an inch, and then I'm going to sew just scan to that as I'm sewing it down. And I know I had a pen somewhere there. And there we go. And here we go. 3/8 of an inch. All the way to the top. I'm going to do that on both sides of my zipper. On the back, might be worth mentioning. So on the wrong side of your zipper, mark your seam allowance. There we are. And do this with a non-permanent marker, so in case you wobble a little with your seam or such, you won't have to view this through your zipper tape if it's a light color later. Here we go. This is way fiddlier than it should be when your hands are shaking. Here we are. There we go. So we got our seam allowance marked. Now we're going to clip down our zipper. And I know I want to close my zipper from the left to the right, so I'm going to clip it down exactly like in the pattern with the top end of my zipper in the left-hand side. So I just start clipping where I made my little mark. And then I just clip this in place all the way around. This is going to be a little bubbly and wobbly since it is a downward curve. But we're going to take care, and all of that bubbly wobbliness is going to end up in the seam allowance. There we go. This is actually one of the times I don't use tape for this, since I want to be able to cut this open. I don't want the tape to be holding my zipper in place. I want it to be able to move later when I turn the bag. That's why I'm using the clips. I'm using a lot of clips. I'm not very steady now. There we go. Now, when we come to the end mark, that is actually exactly where we want our zipper to exit the seam again. So I'm gonna place this here so I know exactly where my seam will end up. So that is exactly where I want my zipper to exit that seam. So I just let this move out of my seam allowance here, like so, and then I'm gonna just pull this down and out of the way, like so, so that it stays nicely and neatly out of the way, like that. Let's put on our presser foot. And when I saw this, I used a rather short stitch length because I'm going to be cutting into my zipper later and I don't want to risk it unraveling. So I'm using this as a way to just extra secure the zipper as well as I'm working. Just follow your drawn seam allowance. And as you see, the bubbliness will end up in the seam allowance with the help of your presser foot. And I'm sewing just to the right of my mark. There we go. And now we just continue straight and let the zipper move out of the seam allowance. Like so. There we go. You can see the bubbliness is out here. The zipper is nice and straight. And then we're going to do the same thing to our back piece. So for this, I'm going to place them next to each other. And then I'm going to just fold this one up. And I'm going to place it down with the right side down. So you start clipping this one at the mark we made, exactly the same way. And if you are uncertain if you have managed to twist your little zipper there, I'm going to show you how I check that in a second. So for now, I'm just going to clip this in place. Actually, I'm going to let you see what I'm doing here because I think you're a little far away to see properly. Something like that. Let's hope you can see what I'm doing better there. As we get to the end here. Let's see. Oops. Yeah, now you should be able to see that. So let's continue clipping this in place. Edge to edge. Wow, it was really difficult to clip with my left hand actually. So when we get to where we're gonna pull our zipper out of our seam allowance, I'm gonna place my ruler, or that didn't have any markings left, 3/8 of an inch from the edge here. So that way I know that is exactly where I want my zipper to go out of my seam. So I'm going to clip that in place, just like so. And then I'm gonna just pull that away and clip this out of the way too, like so. So this way, 3/8 of an inch, it's going out of my seam. Might actually just push that up a little bit. There we go. Yeah, like that. And you see, yeah, perfect. And now I'm just going to double check that these have ended up correctly. So I'm just placing them right sides together, like so. And I untwist this. And as you can see, they are correct. So you don't have to worry about twisting it. So that way you can double check that quite easily. So now I'm going to start in this end here, where my zipper is moving out of my seam. So that's actually almost a little easier than the other way around. So I'm just going to pop that there, hold it in place, back stitch, and then we're just going to sew all the way around like we did with the other zipper. Yep. Oh, my pressure foot pressure is a little high, so I'm just gonna decrease that a little. There we go, nice and neat. And all the wobbliness or excess is in our seam allowance, and our zipper is nice and flat. So that's our zipper secured. Now we're going to move on to our bottom. We're moving fast, huh? I'm going to rearrange my camera again. So now we're going to sew our bottom. So we place it edge to edge, right sides together, and clip our bottom closed. And just the bottom, nothing else. There we go. And I'm going to switch to my zipper foot, as that one will allow me to sew right next to the interfacing, but not on it, so I get a nice and tight seam. If you have a domestic machine, I recommend that you use your zipper foot and just move your needle to the left until it's edge to edge with your interfacing. Here we go. Since I'm working with vinyl, I'm increasing my stitch length a little to about 3.2. And then we just sew these two together, edge to edge with our foam interfacing. And here I might actually have to increase my foot pressure again to really compact my layers, as it's quite thick. There we go. Mamba. Oh, this is going to be such a sweet bag. Here, I'm going to unzip my zipper a little. And then I'm going to open this up like so. And I'm going to stitch this open so that I reduce that kind of bulk in the bottom of my bag. So I don't have that little ridge in the bottom of the bag in my lining later. So there we go. So since I'm going to be sewing straight on my vinyl, I'm going to switch to a Teflon foot. And there we go. And this I just do like this. I just kind of free pull it, since no one will ever see this seam. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be nice and neat. It won't be visible anywhere. It's just to keep it neat. And if you're worried about me pressing this or sewing this seam open, you don't have to be, because this is not a load-bearing seam. We're going to put a bottom on this later, so the pressure is going to be off this seam, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay. And then we're just going to go around and over the next. Make sure you keep your zipper out of the way, guys. It sucks to stitch it down in this step. Don't ask me. I know. I've totally done that. So annoying. So this way we get a nice, neat, flat bottom on our bag with no bulky seams. Like so. No one will ever see it. And ta-da! can't stop looking at it. That's why I'm doing that all the time. I pressed my heavy interfacing to my bottom. So now we're at step 11 and we're gonna fuse this. We're gonna tape this part down. You can use glue as well. Not all tapes are strong enough to hold. I hope this one is not old, because the older it gets, the less sticky it gets and the more problems it gives me. So let's hope it's still good. I keep it in the edge, because that way when I'm sewing it down I don't have to sew through my tape, since that might gum up my needle. Some machines really don't like it and skip stitches when you do that. So let's try to avoid getting tape in our seams whenever we can. So there we go, and we're going to fold this down. Since I don't 100% trust this, I'm just going to place a clip along this here and there, so I don't have to worry about it coming undone as I'm working on it. Just like so. And then we do the other side. Like that. And we fold it over edge to edge. There we go. Nice and tight. And we place a couple of clips just to be safe. Actually, that seems to be staying in place nicely. Now, if you have bag feet, it's time to install them. So I place mine 1 inch from the long side. So let's get a pen. Like so. And mark that. So 1 inch from the edge. Since those nicely stayed in place, we don't need them. And we make a mark 1 inch here too. And then from the short end, I use 1 1/4 inch. But then I measure from the edge of my interfacing, not from the edge of my fabric. So 1 1/4 inch from the edge of my interfacing, like so. Now we do the same on the other side, 1 1/4 inch. There we go. Sorry. And then we take our, if you have the bag feet with the flat legs, or you want to use your seam ripper, since I have this style with a little screw, I'm going to use my hole maker. I can't come up with the word right now in English. Sorry about that. I know you know what it is. But just make your holes in the way you prefer. There we go. 4 of them. And a suitably small hole. Then we just try to center this on the crosses we made. Like that. And we make holes for our feet. There we go. The last 2. There we are. Then we insert the screws from the wrong side, like so. And then we turn it over and we screw on our little feet. I really love bag feet. It makes everything look so professional. It's one of my favorite little unnecessary additions to a bag, but I think it really makes such a difference. There we go. I'm going to screw them down properly, like with my itty bitty screwdriver. There we go, a bit of force. If you're uncertain if these screws are going to stay in place, I recommend that you place a little drop of glue before you kind of screw these into the hole. That way you know they're not going anywhere. However, these have stayed in place nicely for me, so I'm just going to skip that part since my hands are shaking and I don't want glue everywhere. So here we go. Now we're going to place this on top of our exterior. And we're just going to add a bit of tape here. I'll place one in the middle too. There we are. And we take our bag exterior, opening it up. And opening the zipper up. And I'm gonna make sure I see what I'm doing. And I hope you can see what I'm doing as well. There we go. We'll remove that tape covers. Sometimes it's easier said than done. There we go. And then we're going to place this centered on our exterior. So it's going to extend about 1/8 of an inch on each side of this. And then we're going to make sure it's the same on this side. And then we press it in place. There we go. Ta-da! I'm so in love with this. I can't help saying it. I keep repeating myself. I'm really sorry, guys, but it's right up my alley, this cotton candy kind of fairground sweets colors. And I've been saving this vinyl for a long, long time because it's so pretty and I haven't known what I wanted to make with it. But now this Almora bag is really a new favorite of mine. So it was finally time to use it. So now I'm going to switch thread to my top stitching thread. And that is this one from Gutermann. It's called the Topstitch 70. And it's a slightly thicker thread, but it still works great in domestic machines. So if you have a domestic machine and want a somewhat sturdier thread for your bag making, this thread really turns out beautiful and it's perfect in domestic machines. So I really recommend checking it out if you haven't already. There we go. Let's rethread this baby. There we are. There we go. Lengthen your stitches to top stitch length. Make sure you keep your zipper out of the way. Oh, I used the wrong presser foot. And choose an appropriate presser foot. I'm going to use my 1/8 of an inch Teflon foot for this job. So I can sew it right next to this. There we go. And increase your presser foot pressure a bit so that you don't risk skip stitches because that really sucks. And make sure your thread tension is good. And that looks okay before you've sewn the whole thing because that always sucks. There we go. Oh, come on, baby. You can do it. And now we do this one. There we are. And here I got skip stitches anyway. I'm gonna fix that. There we go. Here I had the correct press foot pressure all the way, so no skip stitches, but here I didn't, so that was silly of me. But I'm gonna fix those. I have a video showing how I do this, so I'm not gonna film doing that because hand sewing takes a bit of time and my hands are not steady. So I'm gonna take a little break, just fix that skip stitches. I'll link to the video where I show you how I do this if you wanna fix any skip stitches of your own. Okay guys, now it's time to sew our exterior closed. So exciting. There we go. So we're gonna fold this in half, right sides together. Make sure your zipper is out of the way. This will take a little force here because of the heavy interfacing, but just use a little violence and you should be fine. And then we clip the sides together, like so, edge to edge, all the way down. And we do the other side as well. Just fold a little. There we are. And clippity-clip. By the way, I don't know if you noticed, but we actually don't have sun today. We've had some rain and we're so happy because it's so dry here in Portugal at the moment. We're already lacking water and the fire season has kind of already started. So this dark skies and a bit of rain is exactly what we've been longing for. So that's very happy for us actually. And it's perfect sewing weather. Then we switch again to our zipper foot or any foot that will allow us to sew right next to the interfacing. So you do this exactly like you did the bottom seam. There we go. Shortening a stitch length a bit. I'm using 3.2, 3.3 maybe. Whoops. And then we go. All the way up, back stitch, and go. Then we sew a second seam right outside of this one, about a scant 1/8 of an inch outside it, because this way we will reduce the load when we turn the bag on that seam so that it won't gape open as much. So that makes a real difference. So I would recommend that you do that, especially when working with vinyl. The reason that we don't sew a second seam on top of the first seam is because then we will weaken the vinyl, since it will be perforated unnecessarily. And we really don't want to do that, so that's why we make the second seam just outside the first seam. There we go, 2 seams. And then we do the same thing on this side, making sure zipper is out of the way. In rough. Oops, it got away from me a little there. Oh, come on, there we go. And again, a second seam just outside the first. there we are. Now we're going to do our corners. Again, zipper out of the way. Place one hand into the bag and sort of with your fingers like that, separate the two corners. Line up the middle seam with the side seam and clip in place. And here the interfacing, often want to kind of push over, as you can see there, so just kind of pull it back out of the way, so you don't have to saw through that one too. If this feels really bulky and difficult, you can actually always just add a normal staple or two here instead of the clips. And that way you will know it stays in place. Let me just see that this camera is capturing this. Here we go. And then we place this edge to edge with our interfacing, and we stitch it in place. And I kind of, with my fingers, I hold my interfacing out of the way, since I kind of want to fold over. Here we are. I just pulled it out of the way. There we go. And again, second seam to take the pressure off the first one. There we go. Pop this one out so we don't wrinkle our vinyl unnecessarily. Look at that little candy treat. And we do the same thing on this side. Fingers in, poke out the corners properly like, and then match up the bottom seam with the side seam and clip in place. And carefully pull your foam interfacing out of the way of this seam too, since it really wants to hang over there. And press it back. And stitch. Second seam outside the first one. These seams don't have to be pretty, they just have to be there and strong, therefore they might look a little wobbly or wonky, that doesn't matter. There we go. And we have the exterior of our bag done. Exciting, huh? It's getting really dark here, so I'm going to continue with the lining tomorrow. So I'll see you then. Okay guys, with a little help from my hubby, I managed to get some better light in here. So now we're going to continue anyway. Awesome, right? So we are going to pop over to our lining, and we're going to start with our zipper pocket. So here I got my zipper pocket lining piece. I've got my zipper. And I've got my zipper facing, and that's what we're going to need for this step. So if you have a zipper pocket lining fabric, that was a long word, with direction. Up on the fabric should be in that direction. So we're starting at the bottom. And here we're going to place our zipper right side up. And again, I want to open and close this zipper as well from left to right. So therefore, it's closing from left to right. I've left it a little longer since when I'm working with this zipper, I don't have to worry about the zipper being in the way as I'm sewing down this lining. This way I can just zoom by. So we're going to stitch this in place with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, like so. Right. There we go. Now when we have this one sewn in place, we're gonna trim this little piece, and then we are going to fold this up, right sides together, take the zipper and place it edge to edge with the top of our zipper lining fabric. Then we clip that in place as well. And stitch it down with a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. There we go. Now we're going to cut this open, so we're going to leave it the same way. And we're going to cut the bottom open. Kind of just finger press this down so it's nice and straight. And then we separate these two pieces, like so. They will be different lengths, but they're supposed to, so no worries about that. Pull your zipper in so that it's in this part of the lining, and then you can just trim off the excess zipper. Then we put that aside for now, and we're going to continue with our lining and zipper facing. So here we take a zipper facing, and then we're going to place some tape on this. And I place my tape centered on the zipper facing. This way we don't have to sew through the tape again, since that can gum up the needle and we don't want that. Also, sometimes you can get skip stitches if you're sewing through the tape, so don't do that unless you have to. There we go, all nicely centered. Then we're going to decide where we want to place this, and this might be too small, but we're going to work with it anyway. So we measure from the bottom, and we're going to be 6.5 inches up from the bottom. There we go, 6.5 inches. Then we're going to remove our tape covers all the way around. Here we are, ta-da! And then we're going to place this centered just along the line of our ruler. Let me just double check that from the top. I'm going to move this one a little bit to the right, so it's better centered. If you've got a bigger ruler, it's easier to do this, since then you can use the ruler as a guide to center this. But I'm okay with this. It doesn't matter to me if it's 1/2 inch too long in either direction. So there we go. We tape it down and we use the ruler as a guide to make sure this is perfectly straight. And once it's taped in place, we're going to sew it down. So I'm going to switch to a 1/8 of an inch Teflon foot again, since I'm sewing on the vinyl. And I'm still using my decor stitch thread since I really like how it looks on the vinyl. So I'm going to bring up my bottom thread because we don't want to backstitch to secure this, because if we do, we'll get an ungainly section of our decor stitch here around that will look bulky and ugly. So we avoid that by pulling up our threads, and we're going to tie them down on the back later. Now we're going to sew all the way around the exterior of the zipper facing first. So, why aren't you working? There we go. And then increase your stitch length to your decor stitch length. Make sure your presser foot pressure is correct. And since this is a fairly thin layer, you want to adjust your thread tension accordingly. Let's get started. This is definitely one of those times when slow and steady wins the race. So I had slightly long stitches there. That didn't look very good. So I'm shortening them a little. Let's see that my thread tension is correct. Yeah, that's good. And we stitch all the way to the end here. And then when I come to the little curve, I'm going to stop with my needle down, lift my presser foot a little, turn my fabric around, take one little stitch, and then do the same thing until I'm all the way around the corner, nice and neatly. There we go. Stop with my needle down, lift my presser foot, adjust. One stitch. This might seem very slow, but trust me, it's worth it in the end, because when you're doing this kind of precision stitching, you really want that to look as nice as it can. And it will be worth those extra seconds in the end, I promise you. It's raining again. I don't know if you can hear that, but I'm so happy. I really hope we get lots of rain so we get our reservoirs refilled and the land gets a bit of water so we don't have as many fires, because that's just plain scary. So we don't want that. Now as we come to the end, we sew all the way till our final stitch. Lift our needle, pull out our thread, and trim it. So there we go. We have stitched all the way around the outside. Now we take our hand sewing needle. I use a self-threading one. And I take the two threads from the top here, and let's move that. And I thread my needle. Well, I hope you can hear what I'm saying with all this noise. It's a lot of rain coming down. We still have 2 hours of daylight left, and it's this dark. It's really unusual. Anyway, we're going to stick this down in the holes we already made with our sewing machine. So we're going to thread it down to the back and pull that out there. And then we take our bottom thread and we make a little knot. Or a couple of little knots, so we're sure it doesn't unravel. Oh, wow, it's coming down hard. Then I trim these two. And I just burn my knot a little so I know it won't unravel. There we go. Let's save the hand sewing needle, as otherwise I will never find it again. That is so stupid. Don't clasp your legs together when you're dropping a needle. That can hurt a lot. Please don't do that. So now we're going to cut this open so we can have our zipper in there, and then I just fold it in half and make a little clip. And then I clip it open from the right side, like so, in both directions. Don't clip the vinyl, please. And then I trim it from the back. And here it's also good to have taped only in the middle, because this way you don't have to kind of bend the tape away as well. But since that's only in the middle, you have this neatly taped, and it's easy to follow along the edge of the tape when you're trimming this away. And I leave about 1/4 of an inch, maybe, a seam allowance here. This doesn't have to be precise, it doesn't have to be pretty. Oh, hi Trip! The cat is coming in. Please don't jump on my fabrics, you're really, really wet. Yes, you're really wet. There we go. And done. So here we have our opening. I was just about to toss my scissors. Like that. Oh, hi Trip. This is Trip the cat. I don't know if you can see her. And that's the jealous dog. There we go. Hi darling, you're really wet. You're very wet. Darling, doggo, go to daddy. There we go. Can you sit behind me and be happy with that? Is that okay? Yeah, that's okay. Now, now we're gonna open up this. So since this is on the right hand side, we're just gonna fold this open, and the longer section is gonna be on top. Actually, let's fold that down and tape first. So place your tape in the seam allowance here. Let's see if that's easier to see if I do it like that. In the seam allowance. Actually, don't tape all the way to the end. It'll make it easier when we're going to sew the edges of the zipper later. So you can leave like a scant 1/2 inch without tape to make it easier for you later. There we go. We remove the tape covers like so. Then we're going to take this and we're going to place this in this. Make sure your zipper is in the opening, carefully centered, and your zipper pull in here as well. And this is a little tricky. I'm going to stand up because it's easier for me to see what I'm doing. So I carefully center my zipper in the zipper facing opening, and then I make sure my zipper pull is in the opening as well, like so, and all the way to the end there. There we go. That got a little wonky, so I'm going to lift that and make sure it's nice and even. So something like that. There we go, nicely centered. Then we flip it over and we're going to pin our linings out of the way. So I just fold this up, press it with my fingers and place a pin through the through the lining, top and bottom, so that it's properly out of the way when we're sewing down the zipper. There we go. And then we're going to do the same thing, so all the way around here. But I don't think this might not be the best zipper foot for this job. Woohoo! There we go. Please stand up. No, you don't want to stand up anymore? Okay. This might not be the best zipper foot for this job, so let's try and see if that will work or not. It might actually work. Yeah, we can try that. Whoop. There goes the camera. That doesn't want to stay. Please stay. But first we're going to pull up our bottom thread again. like we did with the exterior seam. So we're gonna stretch this so we have something to hold on to later. And then we're gonna start sewing this down. There we go. Then when we get to the zipper pull, we're going to stop with our needle down, lift this and pull the zipper pull out of the way, like so. Otherwise we'll get a non-pretty bubble where it was, and we don't want that. And there we go, and there we are. Then we stop, turn this around. Oh, put down your presser foot before you sew, otherwise you'll have a rat's nest of threads underneath, and we don't want that. There we are. And then we continue. Wow, that was really wonky. When you get to the zipper pull, stop with your needle down, lift your presser foot, and again, pull it out of the way. All right, let's move these threads out of the way so we don't get them tangled up. There we go. No, we need another stitch. We need another very short stitch, so I'm going to shorten my stitch length and take an itty bitty stitch before I continue. There we go. Oh wow, now we got thunder as well. A lot of thunder. Okay, this might be the time I need to turn off my sewing machine. So let's take the final stitch here and stop with our needle up, lift our presser foot, pull it out, and trim the threads away from. Then we take our hand sewing needle again, and we take the threads from the front and pull them to the back. Here we go. In one of our already made little holes. There we go. And put away your hand sewing needle. Don't put needles in your mouth. That's very stupid. And then we just tie this off again. There we go. Trim. Burn. And we remove those two needles. Then we fold down the top, and we're gonna clip the sides together so we can sew close the sides. We leave the bottom open so we can sew close the opening in the bottom lining later through that opening. And then we do the same on this side. Clip closed. There we go. We're going to sew this from the right side, and we fold this out of the way. Just going to switch to a different presser foot. There we go. Now we sew the sides of the lining closed. So just fold the top of the lining out of the way, like so. And then we sew it closed with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. like that. We do the same thing on the other side. And here I've apparently sewn or trimmed very wonky, so let's just kind of do that. Yeah, no one ever sees the inside of your bag anyway, so this doesn't matter. There we go. And we have a zipper pocket. Ta-da! A very nice rainbow zipper pocket, I might add. So there we go, we have a zipper pocket. Now I'm gonna make an addition that I hope you can hear me through the thunder. Let me just double check the sound. Hi guys, new day, new energy, and more importantly, new light. Sorry about the last clip last night. I really thought it was gonna work with my photo lights and the video, but when I popped it up on my computer last night, I saw that it was flimmering the light, so the frequency of the light and my camera did not work together, so I'm really sorry about that. I will try to remove as much as I can in post-production. Anyway, now I'm gonna add a little extra because I realized that I really miss having a phone pocket in my bag when I don't, so I'm gonna add that actually, and this is super easy. So I've just cut a piece of my cotton fabric, lining fabric, and it's 15 inches by 7.5 inches. And we're going to make a little open slip pocket with this. So all we do is we fold it in half lengthwise. Oh, look at all that cat hair. Fold it in half lengthwise and we'll place a few clips. Like so. And then we're going to sew it closed with, oops, that went flying, about 1/4 inch seam allowance. And we just sew along the long side. We leave the ends open because those will be in the seam allowance of the bag anyway, so no need to worry about those. So we just make a long tube. There we go. We turn it right side out. Oh, come on, fingers, you can do this. Almost. Come on. Some kind of poking device can be good when doing this, if your fingers are weak like mine. Oops. There we go. Come on. There we go. And we have our tube. And I'm just going to pop over and press this. And I press it like this, so I have my little seam just a little bit up from the bottom, so I don't have to saw through the thicker fabric of the seam when I stitch this down. So I'm just going to press this and I'll be back. Here we go. I've pressed my pocket and I'm going to add a line of top stitching here along the top folded edge. And I do that with my compensator foot, but you can, if you have a domestic machine, I recommend you do this with your stitch in the ditch foot, the one with a metal guide in the middle. And then you just move your needle a little to the left so that you can use your metal guide as a guide instead of the compensator part that I'm using. That way you don't have to worry, your top stitching line will be perfectly straight all the way. Like so. Then we take the lining that doesn't have the zipper pocket on it, and we decide where we want our pocket to be. So I think something like that maybe. Let's see what that is. That is about 3¼ inch from the bottom. So then I'm just gonna clip that in place. Whoops, upside down. And I start by sewing down the bottom later, once I have clipped this down. If you're worried about this moving, you can just put a needle or two through in the middle here, so you know it stays still as you're sewing. There we go. And again, my compensator foot to sew it just next to my pocket. Again, you can do this with your stitch in the ditch foot. Let me see what that looks like on this camera. Yep, that looks good. There we go, our pocket is sewn down. Pop. Now we're going to decide how we're going to divide this pocket. So I'm just going to quickly measure my phone here. And my phone is about 6 inches wide. So I want my pocket to be just about a little more generous than 6 inches. So, and I want to be able to put my phone down right in the middle of this pocket. So I'm just gonna like center out 6 inches, something like that. And like that. Slightly generous 6 inches, so 6 inches, 6 1/4 of an inch. That should be good for my phone. And then I have a slightly larger pocket to the side for stuff like my hand sanitizer and other things I cannot live without. So, and then I just top stitch this down. And here it's important that you properly secure this top part of the pocket, since that's the one that will have the most wear and tear, since you're putting stuff in, you're putting stuff out, and you get that kind of daily wear and tear at that section. So make sure you properly backstitch there. And then we do the other one. Same thing here, properly backstitch. Like so. Then I'll just give this a press to remove the green lines. But first I'm just gonna stitch down this, the side of the pocket, so I know it stays in place during construction. And I do that on the other side too, just so I know I don't accidentally fold it away during sewing. There we go. And then I trim the stuff that sticks out outside my lining. There we go. And I do that on this side too. There we are. And let's get rid of some threads as well. So there we go, an open pocket, super easy, super quick to do. I'm just gonna remove those marks quickly. There we go, all gone. And we're ready to start at step 25, sewing our lining together. So we place our linings right sides together. And then we might actually, before we clip this in place, you might want to draw out your seam allowance. Since this again is a somewhat unorthodox seam allowance, you might not have a good mark on your machine. So I'm making my own 3/4 of an inch marks here, so I know where that is as I'm sewing. And on the other side I do the same. I will then sew inside these marks because we want a slightly more generous seam allowance than we used for the exterior of the bag. Since this will be inside the exterior, we don't want them to be exactly the same size, because then the lining will be a little poofy. For the bottom, I use 3/4 of an inch actually, seam allowance. So I'm just gonna draw that out here. And that is also because this will be fit inside the bag. We don't want it to be bulky and bubbly in the bottom. So here we go. Let's clip those two together. There we are. And then in the bottom, we leave a big opening for turning because we have a really stiff bottom in this bag. So we leave a huge opening. We just basically saw the corners so that we can sew the corners later. And then the rest we leave open to make it as easy as possible to get this through without muddling it up too much. So there we are. And then here right at the top, I follow the seam allowance, and then I just stay slightly inside my seam allowance lines. This way my lining is slightly smaller than the exterior of my bag. There we go. And then we do the little piece of the corners or bottoms. Come on, there we go. And the same here. And the final side. And there we are. We're just gonna pop our hand into our lining, and then we're gonna match up the bottom with the sides, like so. And then we're gonna push these out. And they won't be completely even since the bottom and the side seam allowances are a little different. So it will look a little bit like that. That's okay. That's the way it's supposed to look. And then we do the other side as well. Make sure you fold the bottom seam allowance in the same direction, since otherwise it'll be unnecessarily bulky. Gently squish your seam allowances up to the other and nest them together, and then clip it in place. There we go. And this is what I'm talking about. They won't exactly be the same, so just kind of wiggle them down. And then you stitch them with the same seam allowance, a slightly generous 3/4 of an inch. Like so. And we do the same thing on the other side. Because of the rounded sides, that's why it's like this little bubbly and a little difficult to get to lie flat, but that's okay. This is the inside of the bag, and it doesn't have to be perfect, which is great. We don't have to worry so much. We just pop it down there. No one will ever see if this is a little one. There we go. And we have a lining for our bag. Very nice. So we're gonna tape the zipper out of the way because we don't want that to stick in our seam. So we're just gonna take this and add a bit of tape. I hope you can see that. Let me just stand behind here so I can show you what I'm doing. So here we just gently pull that down and just tape it out of the way so that there's no way it ends up in our seam, like so. And we do that on the other side as well. If you have cotton fabric, you can just put a little piece of a safety pin or something instead, if you don't want to tape it. But since I've got vinyl, I'm going to use tape. Oh, sorry, you can't see that. So I'm just putting it down there, way out of the way for the seam, like so. And I'm just going to gently guide that with my finger since it gets a little bubbly. But like so, zippers out of the way. Let's pop the lining in. So we want the lining to be right side out. Like so. And we pop it into our exterior, which is right side in. And then we place the zipper pocket towards the back of the bag, if that's what you want, if you want like me. And then we start by matching up the short sides. So we want our exterior and our lining right sides together. We start by matching up the side seams, since that's the most sensitive part. And cat hair again, always cat hair. And then I kind of just do that to kind of get the middle of the lining. And then I gently ease out any excess fullness in between these two. And here I'm extra careful so that I clip my zipper straight and nice so that it doesn't roll up on itself as I'm sewing. And here I place a few extra clips since I really don't want my zipper to be weird or folded or strange. And then we do this part here, like so, and then the back. We match up the middle. And we match up the wrist, like so. And again here, be a little extra careful where your zipper exits the seam. Add a few extra clips if you want. I always do. Rather safe than sorry, right? And something like that. And like so. Lining and exteriors right sides together. And I'm gonna pop up my domestic machine and set up on the other side of my table, and we will sew it on my domestic with a free arm. Here we are, guys. I'm at my Husqvarna Opal, and I have threaded with the same top Topstitch thread that I used before, and I use regular Guthman in the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to my zipper foot. Whoops, that was not intended. Make sure you have enough bobbin thread of the right color before you start. I think that was my machine's way of reminding me. So I'm going to switch to this zipper foot. If you have something similar, I recommend you go with that. And then I'm going to move my needle to the left so that it's edge to edge with the edge of the zipper foot. This way, when I'm stitching this, I can sew right next to my interfacing without any problems. So that's why I use that. So I hope you can see, make sure you have the correct settings on your sewing machine. You really want to use a proper presser foot pressure, so you have enough presser foot pressure to compress these layers so you get a nice and tight stitch. For mine, I have set it for woven heavy material, and that is usually good enough. And putting that down, and I'm stitching right next to my zipper, just on or outside the seam I made for attaching the zipper. And then I'm just following my interfacing. And this is really a case where slow and steady wins the race, guys. Don't stress. Let this take time. Stop, adjust the position of your bag when you need to. Stop and scratch your nose. Whatever you have to do, just let your machine stop. Don't continue sewing when you're not 100% with your machine. So now when we come to this curve, this is the most difficult part of this bag. So I just kind of gently pull. Can you see that, by the way? Let's do that. Gently pull here at the bottom so I know that my bag can move freely. And then I just gently follow along and pulling under here so that I always know that this can move as it wants to. When I come to the corner, I stop with my needle down and then I gently kind of pull and turn and guide this around the edge. And we follow along the edge of the interfacing here. And now with my needle down, I stop and pull again. There we go. And we gently follow. Don't be afraid to kind of just pull and push. Your bag is needed. We will fix any wrinkles or any other issues later. Now we just want this seam to be nice. And then when we get to the corner, stop with your needle down and then continue around the corner. And here we're going to pull this under and continue our seam. And then we're going to pull this through like so. And then we can just gently continue stitching just inside or just on top of your zipper seam. There we go. And here I gently feel with my fingers that my zipper has not popped up and is in the way. This is really tough work for me. My hands do not want to do this. So if I'm breathing heavily, it's because my body is not made for this. Oh, when I forgot to say that earlier. You might want to, when you come to the corner, you might want to flip this in that direction, the seam allowance. It says in the pattern, so just follow the pattern. Because that way you can see where you're going around the corner. So we're just going to pull this a little and we're going to go around here. There we go. And we just kind of follow that there. Then we just have the final little part left. I will pull that through and continue stitching. And properly backstitch and secure. And of course that got stuck. This machine really needs a bit of service, so the thread cutter is not 100%. But here we go, we have our seam. And all the way around. And I'm just gonna take a little break, have a little water because I'm super tired after that, and then I'll go back to trimming the seam allowance with you. Okay guys, I've had a little water, I have inspected my seam and it's nice all the way around except for here where I kind of dropped the ball a little and lost my grip. So I'm just gonna take a few stitches just here so I get that nice little curve there. So I'm just gonna pop my pop my bag down Do you see anything? No, you don't. That maybe? And just sew that little inner curve again. Back stitch and go. There we go. And now we're going to trim our seam allowance. And I'm going to pull you back a little. And we're going to do that. So we're going to trim this down to a very scant 1/4 inch. Oops, you cannot see what I'm doing. Maybe there. Be careful so you don't cut anything you're not supposed to be cutting. That is really not a good angle, is it? There. Don't want that. Just trim it down, trim the corners. Like so. And then we make little V shapes here, since this is an inner curve. And we really don't want this to be bubbly or difficult. So, make little V's. All the way around the little inner curve here. Oh, this is really difficult for my hands. There we go. There we go. There we are. There we are. Then we do the other inner curve. Like that. And we do the V's here too. I'll trim the corner. This corner. And then we're going to clip our inner curve on the zipper as well. And here I trim through the zipper, the exterior, the interfacing, everything, almost down to the seam, because otherwise our zipper will never lie flat. Our zipper has been stitched down with 2 separate seams, so we shouldn't have to worry about the doorbell. Sorry guys. We shouldn't have to worry about it coming unraveled, even though we're cutting into the zipper tape. There we go, and that is my hubby. And then we trim the other side as well. And we do these little clips, because otherwise we will regret it. There we are, all the way around. There we go. Okay. Now actually, what we're going to do is turn this puppy. So I'm going to reposition the camera so you can see what I'm doing, and then we're going to turn it. Okay. We're going to turn the bag through the opening in the bottom. This is like my favorite part and my least favorite part of making a bag, because I'm always slightly terrified. We're gonna... You might want to trim the seam allowances first, because they are slightly large and you don't want that extra bulk in your bag. So I'm going to trim them down to about 1/4 inch. This way the interior of the bag will lie smoother. Do this here too. There we go. And same for the corners. We want as little bulk as possible on the inside of the bag. Since it's a pretty small bag, it actually makes a difference. There we go. Trimmed, nice and neat. And it's time to see what's inside this baby. Fingers crossed, guys. Please let it be as pretty as I have imagined. Please let me be strong enough to do this. There we go. And we push. And we birth. Oh, goodness. Come on, baby. Baby bag. Come on, my baby bag. We can do this. There we go. We have a corner. God, this is going to be so pretty. And let's pop that out. Push out those corners. Push out those seams. We can remove carefully the tape. Let's hope that doesn't leave a mark. Ooh, might have used too sturdy tape for this delicate. Oh, careful, careful, careful. Test your tape on your vinyl before you do this. There we go. And we have what's starting to look like a very pretty bag. So let's push down the lining into this puppy. And let's give it a little massage. And we're gonna need to maybe use even something like the scissors or any blunt but pointy object to kind of push out these corners. It actually works quite well with my nails, but that's just because they're kind of short at the moment. There we go. The same thing here, push out the corner. And there we go. And this is why you want a non-permanent marker when you mark your seam allowance. I'm just going to give it a pressing and the mark will be gone. Going to massage those seams in place. Just kind of wiggle them between my fingers and kind of push up the zipper like so. And then we're going to try closing this. Ta-da! Look at that little piece of candy, guys. It's so cute. I'm loving it so much already. Oh my goodness, it's gonna be so pretty. But first we're gonna give it a going over with the machine again and top stitch this. And then I'm gonna give it a going over with my hairdryer and some other little fine details. But first things first, let's hammer those seams. So I'm going to show you how I do this, but I'm not going to film when I do this because it's really noisy and I'm going to do it on the floor. So these seams will get a little bulky, and since we're going to put our edge connectors over them, we kind of want to smash them together. If you have a flat pair of tweezers, you can use that. I use a hammer, so just place it down like so. Well, you can't really see that, but I just, with a piece of scrap cloth in between, I just hammer on the seam on a flat surface so that I compress the seam allowances so that it's flatter and easier to work with. So I'm going to do that, but I'm not going to film it because noisy. So I've hammered out my side seams so they are a bit flatter and easier to sew over. And now I'm going to carefully keep massaging my seam allowances, and then I'm going to clip all around the top of my bag so that I can top stitch without risking wrinkly linings. And I'm just like pushing, wriggling, massaging the seam and trying to get everything to be as even as possible. No bumpiness, no bulks. And I continue this way all around. And I gently pull here so that that top corner comes out proper like. Place one here. if this top stitching here doesn't get perfect, don't worry about it. It will be covered. So don't stress about that unnecessarily, because we're gonna pop some metal over that anyway. And we massage, roll. There we go. Oops, there we go. Like so. Hang on, I haven't put on the light. Let me put on some light. There we are. That's a little better actually. And then we finish here at the end, pushing up our corners here. If you need to, put your hand in the lining and poke it up proper, like with a finger or with a blunt but pointy object. Here we are. And we're all the way around, like so. Now I'm going to reposition my camera and we're going to top stitch. Okay. So we are going to top stitch this. Let me just move the camera a little bit and focus in the right place. That's always good. Since this is a vinyl, I want to use a Teflon foot. And the only Teflon foot I have for this machine is this standard H1. So I'm going to use that, and then I'm going to make sure I have the right settings. I have a woven heavy. I might actually want to go into my, let me see if I can get that on the camera for you. No, let me do that then. Go into my settings here and up my presser foot pressure even more. So it's 5 at the moment. I'm actually going to make it 6 so that I know I don't risk any skipped stitches. There we go. Let's pop you back in the holder. Refocus. And then we're going to stitch. So I'm going to gather up my bottom thread here somehow and leave long thread tails, because I don't want to backstitch to secure when I'm top stitching, because that will leave an unsightly pile of threads. I just want to double check that everything is correct. So take a piece of scrap vinyl and I'm just going to sew a few stitches to make sure I have good settings. I'm going to increase my stitch length. See, good that I tested it. And just check that the stitches look good on both sides, and it does. And we're ready to go. So let's get the bottom thread again. There we are. Long thread tails. Oh, come on, why aren't you pulling? Should I have to rethread you? No, there we go. Okay, so here we are. And I'm gonna start, since the front part of my bag is what I'm most worried about, I'm gonna start there. So I get that seam nice and straight. And there we go. And I'm going to use the itty bitty corner on my, what's it called? A presser foot as a guide. So I'm going to move my needle a little to the right, because I want as much of the presser foot as possible on this thick part of the fabric. That way the presser foot pressure is as even as possible, and it helps to condense the layers as much as possible, reducing the risk for skipped stitches. I have a brand new Topstitch needle, 90 weight. You might want to go for 100 even, but I think the 90 should be okay for this vinyl. And then we are off. And slow and steady wins the race. No rushing when top stitching. you will regret it. And I'm just going to stop and make sure that everything looks good, and it does. And we continue. And I have my machine on the needle down setting so that I can readjust my fabric and bag as I go along without risking losing my thread tension as I do so. So here we get to the bulky corner parts. Just take your time. Make sure your zipper is out of the way. And slow and steady. Make sure you pull at the bottom here so your machine can feed the fabric properly. There we go. Let's remove this one. And push and pull and poke and prod as needed. I'm going to use a piang. Piang it's called in Swedish. I'm not sure what it's called in English. To help me guide this part here, because I'm not very strong. My hands are kind of weak at the moment, so I'm just going to use this to help me guide this along. Since my fingers don't have the strength I wish they had. Don't worry that the lining is sticking out. We're going to cover that with the metal anyway, so this does not have to be perfect in any way. Just get those stitches there and be happy with it. Oops. There we go. And I'm sweating buckets. There we are. This is not as tricky as I make it look. It's just because my hands are so weak. I have no grip strength. So if you're just normal strong, it's not as bothersome as it looks when I'm doing it now. And here my recording died, which is very disappointing. However, I hope you've seen me top stitch before. You've seen the other part of the bag being top stitched, so I hope this will work anyway. If you want to see how I hide my threads or anything, it's shown in a lot of my other videos, so you can just simply go to one of my other bag videos to show exactly how I bury my threads when I'm finished top stitching. Let's continue from where I had video again. Hi guys, let's finish this puppy today. So unfortunately there was some problems with my files when I tried to save. So we're missing the part where I saw closed the bottom of the lining and also the opening in the zipper pocket. However, these things are not very difficult to do, so I'm not going to bother unpicking and doing them again. I'm just going to say refer to the pattern, pull at the bottom through the opening in the zipper pocket and sew it closed. It's very simple. So what we're going to do now is actually the strap. And for this one, I've actually lengthened my strap to 21 inches. That's because I want to be able to pop it on my shoulder sometimes. So I don't just want to hold it in my hand, I want to be able to toss it over my shoulder. Therefore, I have increased the part in between the two template pieces before I taped it together. That is also described in the pattern. So what we're going to do now is mark the middle with a non-permanent marker. So there we are. I've chosen to do my strap in two colors. I think it's really pretty in the end. So I have one piece in the pink vinyl, and oh, that was wonky. There we go. and one piece in the multicolored quilted vinyl, and I think that's going to be really nice. So let's mark the middle on both these pieces. Before we continue, like so. There we go. And we're going to take some tape and we're going to tape these to the middle. I hope these won't fray too badly. We'll see. Doesn't matter. It's just the short ends that are actually concerned. There we go. And the other one as well. Today we actually have some sunshine, which is actually quite nice compared to the rain we've been having. But I'm glad we got the rain, so now I can actually enjoy the sunshine, which is good. I choose to enjoy it by sitting inside in my sewing room, by the way. I heard the irony there, but when you get enough hours of sunshine, you don't actually have to hurry out every time the sun shines, which is one of the things I love about living in the southern parts of Europe. So we remove that tape and then we carefully fold our raw edges in towards the middle and the line we made. So cat hair, always cat hair, everywhere. And we just tape it up. There we go. And all the way to the end and the other side. And when I do this, I actually place them edge to edge like so, since we're not going to fold this. There doesn't have to be a little opening, which I normally advocate when folding handles or straps. Yeah. And there we go. And let's do the other one as well. This vinyl is so pretty. I wish I'd bought a lot more of it. But since I didn't know how it was going to be to work with, I didn't dare. And shipping from the US and then import duties and taxes and customs and everything gets ridiculously expensive. But sometimes when it's vinyls like this one, I can't help myself. I have to do it. There we go. And the other side as well. It is so pretty. There we go. And let's pop some tape here. This kind of want to unfold itself. Let's do a little piece of tape there so that it stays closed while we're working with it. And then we tape this all the way down to the bottom, like so. And I place a little piece over there so it doesn't unfold. And then we're going to join the two pieces. Let me unpick that. Here we go. There we go. Okay, and then we place this one on top. And my tape is a little old, so it comes undone. But let's try to do this anyway. So just carefully line up the two. I usually use my fingers to kind of feel the edges, like when I'm sewing. And then just place them on top of each other, edge to edge. all the way down to the bottom. Oh, look at what you're doing, that helps. And all the way down, there we go. And I clearly mismeasured here a bit, so let me just trim that. There we go. Ta-ta! Let's sew this closed. And I sew this closed with my compensator foot and my deco stitch thread from Gutterman. So let's do this. Oh, and I pull up the bottom thread so that I don't have to backstitch to secure. I will just tie it off at the end instead. Here we go. Check your stitch length and let's do this. Let me just double check that the tension is good, and it is. Yay! Normally, I would recommend that you stop your seam here and start over from this end again, because you don't want your strap to twist. However, since I have misplaced my compensator foot for that side, I'm just going to be lazy and go all the way around. And oh, and why am I getting skip stitches? That's not good. Okay. That's not good at all. Oh, Jesus. I'm gonna double check and see why my machine is unhappy. And then we will continue stitching this. So I switched to a new needle, and hopefully that should solve our problems. We will soon see. Fingers crossed, guys. Yeah, that looks better. As you can see, my strap twists a little now since I'm sewing from the same direction, but it's usually not a problem after I put it on the bag, so I'm not too worried. But if you are bothered by this, you can of course either use a walking foot or sew both lines of stitching from the same side. There we go. New needle, no problems. Sorry. Make sure you always switch your needle when it starts to get iffy or a little blunt. So when we put this on the bag, it's not going to be a problem, but for now it's looking a little wonky. Let's tie this off. And I do that the same way I do most of these things. So I'm just going to take my self-threading needle and I pull the threads out to the opening, like so, from both sides. And that way I can tie them off in a place where it's not visible. There we go. Like so. There we go, and we cut and we burn. This way we melt the ends and we know they won't unravel. Do the same thing on this side. If I can get a hold of the needle. There we go. So my alarm went off for me to take pills. So let's continue pulling our threads into the middle here. And I just pull all the threads into the middle and then tie all 4 of them off together to save myself some hassle. Trim and burn. Just pop it in there. There we go. So we have a strap, a little twisted, but that doesn't matter. If you're making long straps, don't do this. Don't be lazy like I am. Do as I say, not as I do. Okay, so we are going to pop our edge connectors on first, because depending. Hi now, my sewing assistant is here. Both of them. Well, and I lost my train of thought. Yeah, we're gonna put on our edge connectors first, because depending on what kind of edge connector you're using, it can be really hard to put them on if you have already put on your strap. So let's do that first. That was not them. That was them. So the kind I have here is from, it's from the Color Zipper website. I've also used the ones from Emmeline, which you attach a little differently, but these ones are super simple. You just literally pop them over the edge of your bag. If this is too tight, just hammer the edge a little, or even trim away a little seam allowance if you need to. But usually it's not too much of a problem because they're kind of wide. So I've unscrewed the screws here. All but one, apparently. And I pop them on, carefully centered, along the side seam, making sure they're right in the middle, there, and that they are straight. If you want, you can add a drop or two of glue to the bottom of this, but I've found that the little screws, even though they're very small, they do hold these in place, even if I load my bag quite heavily, so I won't bother with that. I will just drop the screw. Let me turn you around a little so I know you see what I'm doing here. There we go. Like so, and you just force these in, which is easier said than done when you have the cell phone in the way for filming. Like so. Can you see? Is it focused? No, it's not. It's focused on my hand. There we go, that's better. And we just force these in through the layers of fabric. And I am barely strong enough. Let's see. Let's do the other one for now. Whew. That was quite a chore. I might have to ask my hubby for help with this. Oops. Oops. Because I'm not very strong at the moment. There we go. There we go, that was easier. Stand up. I'm just going to make sure it's still fairly straight. Fairly straight. And let's try to get the final one into. There we go. Oh, come on. Okay, I'm going to ask my hubby to help me with the last bit there. In the meantime, I'll do this one. Make sure it's straight. Find your little screw. There we go. You try. Sorry guys, if you're not seeing this, but I'm just not strong to do it in any other angle. So let's try this. And the final little screw. I need to put all my weight behind this. There we go. I did it. I very nearly did it. Come on. All the way in. There we go. Ta-da! We have edge connectors. Yay! Let's take a look. Ta-da! They're so pretty. I'm just gonna push that through a little better. But I'm gonna have to ask my hubby for help because I need more muscle than I currently have. Okay, so I'm gonna do that and I'll be back and we will continue with the rivets. So let's add our rivets. But first we're gonna make holes for them. So I make a mark. Let's see. First one mark 3/8 of an inch from the end, carefully centered, and then one mark 3 inches and 1/8 of an inch from the end. That was not very centered at all, so let's adjust that. And the same thing on the other side. 3/8 of an inch and 3 inches and 1/8 of an inch. There we go. Then we make our holes with a size suitable for our rivets. And I use my 2mm hole for these. And on this side as well. There we go. Then we're going to pop them around. Let's pop this one out of the way. And then we're going to swivel this around like so. And we pop in our rivet. 1 and hopefully 2. There we go. Like so. And we pop on the cap. So the rivet should only just stick out of your layers if you have the correct size post. And we're going to set this, and I'm sorry for the noise. I use a small bit of foam so I don't accidentally scratch my rivet with my tool. Oops. Then I just pop it down like so. These were not good quality rivets. Okay. Don't buy your rivets from with Amazon places. They might not hold. This was not very nice at all. I'm gonna replace these, but since they're the only ones I have of this size right now, I'm gonna set them so we can finish our bag, and then I will trim them off and replace them later with nicer ones. So force your rivet through, pop on your cap, and let's set it like so. Feel your rivet, and there we go. Our rivets are set. We have a handle on our bag, like so. And now all we have to do is add the end to our zipper. And we can do that here too. So I'm just gonna go fetch it. So I have a metal zipper end here. And then I have a little itty bitty screw. And I pulled out my zipper. I'm just gonna trim it at what I think is a suitable length, like so. And then I'm gonna burn the edges, so they're easier to work with. And then I fold them, something like that. And I pop this on. Gently feed the zipper end all the way into the bottom. And if you want, again, you can place a drop of glue in the bottom here, but I haven't had any issues with them coming off, so I'm not gonna bother. Then I'm just screwing this down. Whoops. Again, we'll see if I'm strong enough to do that, or if I'm gonna have to call a hubby. Who wasn't home, by the way, so my screw is still not in, but I'm gonna fix it later. So I'm definitely not strong enough to do this, but you can see the idea. You screw this in there and you are done. I'm gonna ask my hubby to do that when he gets home, but for now I'm just gonna pop that in there so we can see how our bag turned out. Isn't it pretty, guys? I'm gonna give it a bit of a going over with my hairdryer to get rid of like the fold down here and any remaining little wrinkles or anything. But other than that, we're pretty much done. Thank you so very much for watching, guys. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them in the comments. I hope you have a good day. Take care.